Hey guys, how we doing? Back on another video from Mother's Basement. Now, during all this quarantine malarkey, we've had quite a few animes either postponed, cancelled, or, we just can't watch stuff. So I found that Mother's Basement have done 2 Netflix anime report card videos, and I thought it'd be worth checking out because I have a Netflix, and I want stuff to watch. Like, I'm literally at the moment just waiting every Wednesday to watch Tower of God, and then I'm diving into little things like Isekai Quartet, and I'm still watching Princess Connect, and a little bit about, but I want like a proper few series to check out on that. So let's see what Mother's Basement recommends for the for Netflix, shall we?
To start us off on a high note, Agretzko just came back for a second season, and pretty much everything that I said in my first video
I need to watch
about
that second season.
The show still offers valuable life lessons for adults presented with cartoonish simplicity that belies a great deal of character depth. Where the first season was largely focused on the immediate challenges of finding one's footing at work and dealing with apparently hostile management and coworkers, this new one has more of an eye toward the future. The season sees Retsuko struggling to figure out exactly where she wants her life to lead. Her overbearing mother keeps pushing the idea of arranged marriage on her, and while her suggestions are all duds, they do get Retsuko thinking more seriously about finding a real life partner. At the same time, she finds herself exasperated dealing with a new hire at work, a kid fresh out of college who's even less prepared for adulthood than she was in season 1, and who takes it out on everyone else around him. Motherhood is a core theme here, and a lot of Retsuko's growth involves learning how to support and nurture other people and finding happiness in doing so. There's a lot of potential pitfalls there. A lesser show could easily end up endorsing marriage and babies as the only way a woman can be happy. Thankfully, Agretzko handles those ideas with nuance and makes it crystal clear that while that life is what's best for Retsuko, it's not for everyone.
Right, I like that.
People close to her go down very different paths this season, some of which lead them far away from her. And the show treats all of their decisions as valid because its core lesson is simple and universal. You can only build toward happiness when you know who you are and what you want.
Wow,
Compromising on that truth,
the first season I was just like,
will only bring you and them trouble. That's valuable advice for everyone, but it's not the only nugget of wisdom the season has to offer. I was pleasantly surprised to see the show directly call out the real source of Retsuko and her co-workers' collective angst.
Late-stage capitalism is such a pain.
Obviously, with this being a series about a miserable salarywoman suffering under malicious management at a big
Do we still get good karaoke
run by
moments?
an idiot, the failures of capitalism have been a major underlying theme in Agretzko from episode 1. But this being a big corporate product designed to sell mascot merchandise, I never expected them to so much as imply that the reason everyone is miserable might be that the whole system is broken. Yet, here we have them stating it outright, and the person saying it is, without spoiling things, pretty much objectively the smartest guy in the class, and a close analog to a certain real-world billionaire who a lot of nerds tend to idolize. And while the show does posit that this character needs to adjust his utopian vision of the future to accommodate people who are happy leading lives of what he'd call drudgery, it also concedes that he's basically right and that the world he wants to build would be a good one. I don't think that the path to that world needs to be quite as sci-fi as the show makes it out to be, and this could just be a shameless attempt to
so we'll have mental breakdown moments. That's cool.
Marketing purposes, but I think that any kind of remotely mainstream media just introducing its audience to the idea that capitalism might be outliving its usefulness is a net positive. And there's a lot of other positives to praise here, too. The returning characters are as lovable and complex as they've always been. The humor remains on point throughout. And Agretzko is still rocking one of the best dubs in recent memory. I'm giving this season a solid
the English dub a lot.
And I cannot wait to see what the show's next installment has in store.
I need to check out that season too. That's a good show.
Only stationary mascot-based anime about a young single working woman in a state of existential crisis. Man, I wonder what their demographics are like. Real Akuma and Kaoru is a rarity in the world of anime, a stop-motion series, and at first glance a rather charming one at that, though when is stop-motion animation not charming? The series follows a slightly sad, very single office lady named Kaoru who lives in a small apartment with 3 strange roommates. A big lazy teddy bear named Real Akuma, a smaller lazy teddy bear named Ko-Real Akuma, and a bird named Kiroi Tori, who does most of the housework. This show is, in a word, quirky. It's got a soft, surreal sense of humor and a chill, slow pace to it that makes for solid relaxation fodder. At its heart, Real Akuma is a celebration of self-care in the face of loneliness and depression, of stopping to appreciate the small, happy moments in your life and make them for yourself. And in keeping with that theme, it exudes a serene, calming beauty. The craftsmanship apparent in its sets and character models is really something to behold, and while I personally prefer the slightly more exaggerated animation styles of Laika and Aardman, the subtle expressiveness of this show's characters is impressive in its own way. And I really wish there was more I could say about this series, but while I'm generally a sucker for stop motion and I appreciate what it's going for, something about it left me feeling a little cold. It doesn't really have the depth of character writing that's needed to make this kind of cozy slice of life work as anything more than a pleasant distraction, and it doesn't even work on that level for me all the way through, because the longer I watched it, the less I liked Kaoru as a character.
Oh dear.
When it started, I found her to be relatable, if a bit boring, but there's this one episode where she kicks her plushy mascot roommates out of the house because a psychic told her to, and while it gets resolved in the show and all is forgiven by the characters, like, sorry, I made you homeless for a day. I brought you candy, though. It was just such a shitty thing to do that seeing it go basically unacknowledged killed any empathy I had for her. And without that element of empathy, she kind of just ends up coming off as miserable. I still very much enjoyed watching the antics of Real Akuma and co. They're super cute and often hilarious, but I got nothing out of those segments that I couldn't have gotten from watching Cheeton clips on Twitter. And a man cannot live on kawaii alone, you know? That's not true. I totally can. This just isn't the kawaii show for me. Still, I can appreciate the artistry behind it, and I recognize that not everyone's going to be put off by Kaoru the way that I was, so I'm giving it a B. Next up is Netflix's newest original anime, Seven Seeds.
Seven Seeds. This keeps coming up as recommended.
Of humans who are unwittingly put into cryosleep before a meteor hits the Earth and revived centuries later to repopulate the planet, which is now overrun with giant insects and other hostile creatures. Also, none of those people have any idea what's going on, and the truth of the matter is kept a mystery to them and the audience in the first 2 episodes for no good reason, really. Each group of survivors has a government guide with them who does know what's going on, but the woman assigned to the main group just lies and refuses to explain what's going on for days on end.
Why?
People in her charge.
I hate that. Like, just keep the mystery going for ages.
Lies on her ass. Because they haven't met up with the rest of their group yet, that she doesn't want to explain it twice. I'm sure there's some sort of explanation as to why the government organization that froze all of these people wouldn't tell them what's happening.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? That's so weird.
Any kind of survival training whatsoever before entrusting the fate of humanity to them. Like, there'd have to be, right? Because it seems really dumb. But it's not offered in the first 4 episodes, and I couldn't stand to watch any further than that. I just hate the characters in this show. All of them.
So staying away from this one, then.
The assholes are such comedically over-the-top dicks that I can't take them seriously, and the supposedly sympathetic characters are all just way too whiny, especially the protagonist. I'm not normally bothered by that kind of thing. I love Shinji's arc in Evangelion, and I will defend Sota from Recreators to the death. But I cannot
I need to watch Recreators as well now.
I mean, there's social anxiety, and then there's being too chicken shit to call out to the only other survivors of what you think is a shipwreck across an empty field to tell them that you found water. I'm sure that there are real people out there with hang-ups that severe, and maybe this is a bit callous of me to say, but that kind of person wouldn't be my first choice, or my 100th, if I was tasked with selecting a few dozen people from across Japan as humanity's last hope to repopulate
like there has to be reason they've been chosen.
And they certainly wouldn't be my first choice for the protagonist of an anime that I want to watch to entertain myself. Then again, the same computer that made that call also had the government pay canonically $1 million to freeze the kind of guy who'd threaten a woman with sexual assault at knife point the first time they're alone together. So, I guess Natsu's not that bad in the grand scheme of things. Character gripes aside, the pacing of this show is absolutely abysmal. The story jumps around erratically across time and space with little rhyme or reason, rushing from plot point to plot point with few attempts to orient the viewer, and because it moves so quickly, nothing that happens feels like it matters. From what I read, it looks like at least some of these frustrations are a product of bad adaptation. The manga's story follows just one group of survivors at the start, whereas the anime jumps back and forth between 2 in a very confusing manner, and manga Natsu is actually capable of shouting of her own volition instead of needing a man to do it for her. So that's something. Now, obviously, you've got to cut some things and make some changes when you try to condense 83 chapters of manga into 12 episodes of anime, but maybe then don't adapt it like that. Just a thought. It also looks awful. The animation is stiff and
it does
lifeless.
seem a bit
the
off,
artwork is
like, in
mediocre
places
at the
that,
best
like,
of
it looks
times and a poor representation of manga's soft shoujo style. And while the CGI is pretty good at some points, at others the compositing is just unacceptable. It's 2019. A shot of two people floating in water shouldn't look like disembodied heads in front of a Windows screensaver, yeah? Remember when Gonzo made stuff like Gankutsuo, Last Exile, Desert Punk, Bokurano, Welcome to the NHK? How does a studio go from that to this and Conception?
Oh dear.
The answer to that question is years of
Conception as well, damn.
Just by the way. There are parts of this anime that I do really like. It's cool seeing the characters trying to navigate a Japan whose geography has been dramatically altered by rising tides and the passage of time. But when adaptation-mandated time skips make things like distance and time feel negligible, and those characters don't act like anything resembling real human beings, it makes it hard to actually buy into that cool setting, especially when it's rendered with such drab, uninspired visuals. Aside from Hero Mask, this might well be Netflix's worst original.
Oh, right, so Hero Mask is bad as well. Damn, because that's
everything about Seven Seeds
that's
not frustrating is boring. And
so glad I checked this video out.
I'm giving it an F. To be clear, I only feel comfortable giving the show that grade without having finished it because I hated it enough to drop it.
Damn, that's
as far
bad.
as I'm concerned, there is nothing Seven Seeds can do to make the time it's already wasted feel worthwhile or to make me not hate its characters.
Stay away from Seven Seeds, stay away from Hero Mask. Okay.
There are a few other anime that came out on Netflix this year that I haven't seen enough of to make a judgment call on, though. Revisions is a fun and fairly juvenile mecha anime with a cool time travel hook, and it's one of the better-looking CGI anime I've seen. Ingress the animation is a bit uglier,
don't know
but
if that's on the UK one. I've not seen that on my Netflix.
Mobile game adaptation to be, especially one of the thing that Niantic made before Pokemon Go. Lastly, Piano no Mori seems like a pretty fun shonen-style look at classical music, but I haven't had time to give it a real shot. Hopefully, I'll be able to look at all of those along with Carol on Tuesday in a follow-up video down the line. Before we get to our final grade of the day, there's one more anime that I did watch all the way through, but will not be grading.
Ooh, is this Ultraman?
Ultraman from Production IG.
Ooh, is this worth checking out?
I really enjoyed it, but I feel like I don't have the context I need to properly evaluate what it's doing. Ultraman is a direct sequel to the classic 1960s tokusatsu series of the same name, which pays loving tribute to its legacy while also telling a story that I think critiques the unambiguous good versus evil plot lines of your average superhero story, as well as the xenophobia baked into Ultraman's fight.
See, I might like this because I really enjoyed Gridman.
I say I think, in part because the story of the first season cuts off before it can really answer the questions it's raised, and in greater part because I've never seen the classic Ultraman, and without that context, it's hard to get a full grasp of what this new series is trying to say and what it's accomplished. I don't know how much of its approach to the superhero narrative is a novel subversion, and how much it's taking from that original show,
that was pretty cool.
And I just don't currently have time to binge 40 episodes of vintage television to find out.
I thought I was going to say Ultraman on Netflix for 40 episodes. Like,
I did really enjoy what Ultraman did, both with its action scenes and its character writing, and I'm going to keep watching it to see where it goes. Maybe once another season is out, I'll be able to properly evaluate it. For now, though, all I can say is that this was a fun time, even though I haven't seen that original series, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how this studio combo and directing team handles Ghost in the Shell standalone.
Do you know what?
The last anime
I've watched Ghost in the Shell, and I quite enjoyed it. I quite enjoyed it.
Neon Genesis Evangelion is one of the greatest anime of all time, and the streaming platform won itself a ton of goodwill when it announced the long-awaited re-release of Hideaki Anno's seminal mecha series late last year. But most of that goodwill evaporated when the series was actually released.
Didn't they
Netflix
change
made
a few things?
A lot of changes to the show's localization beyond simply allowing Western fans to watch it in HD for the first time, and they were almost all for the worse. The most glaring change was the removal of the show's ending theme, a karaoke rendition of Bart Howard's classic Fly Me to the Moon, performed by various singers, and at times the voice actresses of Rei, Asuka, and Misato. The likely reason behind this change is pretty obvious. It's a pricey song to license in North America, and it was probably
licensing issues. It happens.
Some will argue that this is a negligible trade-off for having access to Evangelion in any form, and I can certainly see the reasoning behind that viewpoint. Aside from episode 15, where ripping the instrumental version of Fly Me to the Moon out of the backing track completely butchers one of the most emotionally resonant scenes in the series, it's not like changing the show's ending credits song changes its story or its meaning, right? Well, I'd argue that maybe in this show, where most of the characters suffer from a pathological inability to communicate their feelings to one another, there might be some thematic relevance in ending every episode with a song about dancing around saying the words, "I love you." I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into this, and obviously I'm a bit biased as an anime credits aficionado, but if the creators of Evangelion didn't think that this song had significance as part of the message they were trying to send, why did they make a different version of that song for every episode of the show, plus a few more for the Laserdiscs and DVDs? Why did they bring it back a decade later for the first rebuild movie?
1.0.
In my opinion, Fly Me to the Moon is a vital piece of the complete artistic package that is Neon Genesis
DVD release, wasn't it?
whether the pencil pushers at Netflix understand that or not. And from an art preservation standpoint, it is flat out unacceptable that the only version of the series legally available to Western audiences right now does not include it. And that's only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to problems with this release. While the new dub has a solid cast, the script suffers from hyper-literal line translations that no actor could deliver without sounding awkward. And the subtitles, if you can believe it, are even worse.
What?
To highlight just how bad they are, I do have to show you some scenes from the series. Nothing with super heavy spoilers, but there are some spoilers here, so watch at your own risk. The biggest point of controversy has been the new translation's handling of an implicitly romantic scene between Shinji and a new male Eva pilot named Kaworu.
I'm saying I love you. I'm saying I like you.
Now, translation is an art, not a science, and you can make a subjective case that the ambiguity of translating ski as like rather than love helps viewers connect with Shinji's feelings of confusion toward Kaworu, but only if you don't look at the broader impact this has on Shinji's characterization. Right after this scene, Shinji muses to himself that nobody's ever told him they love him before. Changing that to "nobody's ever told me they like me" reframes the profound pain of growing up without ever being told he's loved, not even by his parents, into something a lot more petty and juvenile, at least in English, where nobody says "I like you" outside of high school. This change robs this moment of its real weight and significance, and obscures just how fucked up Shinji really is. Sorry, how the lowest of the low is, because they changed that really iconic line for End of Eva too. And Netflix's translators made another change to the movie that highlights just how little they really understand the show's characters.
I want to stay with you, Asuka, and I want to help you, but I don't know what to do. Please, Asuka, you're the only person that can help me.
Come on, I want to be useful. I want to be together forever. Please, Asuka, you're the only one for me.
Wow.
So let me get this straight.
Wow.
Kaworu, quite possibly the single most forward and emotionally open character with a speaking role in the entire series, expresses his affection for Shinji in a vague, non-committal manner, yet Shinji, whose whole thing is being quiet, vague, and indecisive, is able to make an explicit declaration of love to Asuka, even when he's clearly got some conflicting feelings toward her. That is completely ass backwards.
You completely changed the character there. That's mad.
This is a bad translation that makes an already famously confusing series even more
confusing.
difficult to
my God.
understand. To be clear, this release isn't unwatchable. It's definitely preferable to never watching Evangelion at all. This is still one of the greatest anime ever made and a phenomenal treatise on the human condition. But because of that, Eva deserves far better than the bare minimum.
That's a shame.
A decade-old out-of-print DVD collection should not still be the best legal way to watch this show in English. Evangelion as a series gets an A+, but this release of it gets a C. Not all of that is Netflix's fault, mind you. Studio Kara is reportedly very controlling with the Eva license, and some of the translation issues with at least the
if you've got hold of that, you ain't letting go with the
children are probably down to their meddling. But regardless of where all of these changes come from, they are a problem that needs to be noted and hopefully addressed. And while I don't know exactly what went on behind the scenes and who's responsible for what here, I don't think that anime-centric platforms like Crunchyroll, HiDive, and Funimation would have released Eva in a state this bad.
I don't think they would.
Because whatever faults those sites might have, the people working there who I've met all really love and care about anime, and they would do everything they can to make Eva as good as it could be. Netflix seems to be eyeing anime in more or less the exact same way that TV stations did in the 90s, as a relatively cheap source of entertaining content that can be used to counter the unrivaled production capacity of their biggest competitors, particularly Disney. And just as those TV stations helped to introduce my generation to the wonders of anime, Netflix is contributing a great deal to the growth of the anime community today, which I am grateful for. But they don't seem to respect that community, or see the real value in the art that fuels it. That's the impression I'm getting from their delayed and mishandled releases, anyway. That said, they are getting anime out there and facilitating, in part, the production and distribution of some really great original series, so it's not all bad. It could just be a lot better. Those are my thoughts, for now, on the current state of anime on Netflix. I know I bang on about this a lot, but they're going to be a major player in the Western anime community moving forward, and there's a lot I'd like to see them change to make the best use of that position.
Yes,
I'm
definitely.
sure you have thoughts
I
of your
agree
own,
with
so
that.
please leave those in the comments below, and while you're down there, my sleep-deprived brain could really use the dopamine spike of seeing my sub count go up. Please and thank you. I'm Jeff Thu,
Nearly on a million now, isn't it?
signing out from my mother's basement.
Damn, right, okay, so Hero of Mask, stay away from, 7 Seeds, stay away from. I need to check out Season 2 of Regrets Go, because I liked Season 1. And Ultraman I shall check out at some point. Cool, so there's some decent suggestions from Netflix. But, what do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe if you haven't already, leave comments down below. Let me know what I should watch and discuss in future videos. But I'll see you guys next time. Bye.